Welcome to the Fun Going Fast channel. Today let's talk about 5 reasons to buy the newer model current generation Polaris Scrambler 850 XP. This is around 2011, 12, 13 and up. Not a lot of model differences these days, but I feel like this is a four-wheeler that's overlooked and doesn't get the credit it deserves, or at least it doesn't get any of the views compared to my other videos. But it's a really impressive four-wheeler. It has a lot to offer, and let's talk about why you might want to consider one. Reason number 1, ergonomics. The motor is actually put in sideways instead of longitudinally, or whichever way that is. At any rate, it actually makes it narrower in the middle, which makes a huge difference in the comfort. Even though this thing's a 850cc machine, which basically is almost a side-by-side motor, it doesn't feel like that when you're on it at all. And the ergonomics, the way the seat fits, which we'll talk about in a second, the reach to the handlebars, the foot pegs, everything is exactly where it needs to be. And I'll talk a little bit more about the other reasons this thing adds up to be the most comfortable four-wheeler I've ever ridden, sport or any other genre. It's amazing how everything comes together on it. Reason number 2, speaking of the seat comfort. It's the most comfortable seat I've ever ridden in my life on any ATV, and I've ridden, I don't know, 15 or 20 at this point, and it's just perfect. The cushion, it's comfortable, it's not too firm, the width is perfect like we talked about earlier, and it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but if you go for longer rides, it can be definitely a big deal, especially if you're doing a lot of sitting. But this thing, because of the width of the machine, it's comfortable sitting, but also standing. Reason number 3, the power steering. Again, some of the best in the business. I know Yamaha's got a really great setup with their Grizzly. Man, this power steering, it's just super light, and you don't feel any of the bumps as you're running over rough rocks and terrain. And combine that with its maneuverability, the way it steers, and its turning circle is insane. It'll turn tighter than 250 four-wheeler. Whatever they did, it just gave this clearance. It reminds you of if you've ever driven a Jeep Wrangler, it'll just about turn around on itself. So that power steering combined with how tight that thing turns makes it incredibly maneuverable and comfortable over rough and rocky terrain. Reason number 4, the suspension is really impressive. It's independent rear suspension, and it's Fox piggyback shocks on all 4 corners and adjustable, and it just soaks up everything. It's just part of what makes this thing so smooth and easy to ride fast or ride slow. And it's almost too good. When I got it on my first ride, I started hitting these jumps and just started sending it at speed because it just soaked everything up. And I rode for several hours and just started getting more and more aggressive, and I ended up actually landing so many times hard that I pressed the engine into the skid plate, and it knocked a little bit of a hole, and I ended up having a really slow oil leak. So be careful when you're jumping. It is still almost an 800-pound machine, but my God, that suspension on this thing is just incredible and makes it just so much fun to ride. And number 5, none of this would mean anything without the power. This thing weighs 735 pounds, but it has 77 horsepower. That's the same power to weight ratio as a Carb YFZ 450 race four-wheeler. That puts it into perspective, which weighs around 400 pounds and has 40 horsepower. So it's carrying about 10 pounds per horsepower, and this thing will move. Now obviously, I mean, it's a big bore sport quad, so it has plenty of low-end torque, but it revs and pulls all the way to redline. It has this great linear power curve, and it never falls on its feet. You run out of room before it runs out of pulling power. Even like the Yamaha Raptor 700, which is amazing, you can tell its characteristics are more towards the bottom and middle range, and this thing pulls just all the way through, and that's even with the CVT transmission. So pretty remarkable how Polaris did that, and it makes it a ton of fun. So when you add all these things in together, that the ergonomics, the narrow width of it, that incredibly comfortable seat, the amazing power steering, the maneuverability, the suspension, this thing is so much fun to ride and so easy to ride. A lot of this footage came when I first got this four-wheeler. I rode for 4 hours on it and hadn't ridden in probably 6 months, and the next day I was shocked that I wasn't even remotely sore, and rode pretty hard and over some challenging terrain, and that does not happen for me on any other machine. And even on the Can-Am Renegade I had got a little bit sore, and on sport four-wheelers, definitely on a longer ride I can get a little bit sore, back, neck, legs. But this thing, I took it to Hatfield and McCoy and rode for 4 hours again, then rode the next day for 4 hours. And you're barely even tired when you get off the machine. It's just incredible. So if you're somebody that likes longer rides, you ride in groups, you want to cruise easy, you want to get on it, it's got, you know, selectable four-wheel drive, and it'll do the front locker on its own automatically. Polaris and Can-Am both have that, and that system works great. And it's just such a smooth, easy to ride machine. And then honorable mention, just to add in, it's got a really nice digital gauge with a lot of information if you get the XP model. And I love the exhaust note. That's the best factory exhaust note I think I've heard. It helps that it's a big bore, but I know, like on other race quads, big bore sport quads, it's pretty docile, pretty quiet from the factory, which I understand maybe they have sound requirements, but I love the factory exhaust on the Polaris. So if you're interested in something a little bit more comfortable but still fast, four-wheel drive, you still want to be able to ride aggressively, and if it's just you, I find this thing more fun to ride than a side-by-side, to be honest. So really give it a chance. Check out the Polaris Scrambler 850 XPs. Thanks for watching.